I'm Professor Paul Oberholster, Director of the Center of Environmental Management at the University of the Free State. My occupation is a limnologist. A limnologist is somebody that do research on inland freshwater bodies and systems, and which include then rivers, dams and wetlands. A limnologist works specifically with freshwater aquatic systems. It's a system thinker. So there's different levels within your ecosystem. So we start off with microorganisms, bacteria specifically at the bottom. Moving up through the system, we're looking at microinvertebrates, we look at zooplankton in the system, and then obviously your predators, your fish that consume these zooplankton. From there we look further into larger organisms, your vertebrates, specifically looking at crocodiles in such system, large aquatic water birds, and these all interact, and it's like a food web. And if one of these organisms die due to, for example, water quality of poor or pollution that comes into the system, you've got a link out of this food chain that doesn't exist. And that's when you get tolerant species occurring more in such systems. So what the limnologists do is to look at the balance, look at what species occur, and from that can determine if this system is being impacted by pollution or not being impacted by pollution specifically. Limnologists can also look at the water cycle. It includes your groundwater and your surface water. So the groundwater can play a role within your surface water, and can also play a role related to pollution in the system itself. My current project is at the Beers mining at Kroonstad. It's a diamond mine, Voorspoed, and what we try to do here is to improve the water quality of the stormwater dams by using drifting wetlands. These drifting wetlands then absorb the metals and nutrients out of this water and improve the water quality and ecosystems, and also provide an habitat for aquatic birds. Limnologists work normally with other fields of interest, and these fields are chemists that help analyze the water chemistry specifically, look if this water quality is within the guideline of South Africa, guidelines stated for wastewater. Then we also work with fish specialists, where we look at fish health, and there we look specifically at if fish can be consumed by humans, if it's safe or not. Then we also look at microbiologists. Microbiologists normally look at bacteria in the water and E. coli, and to see if the water is safe for drinking or if it's been contaminated by E. coli itself. At school in the biology class, I was really very intrigued by microscope work and microorganisms. And as I grew up at school, I realized that this is one of the fields I wanted to explore in my career. So after school, I became a high school teacher for 13 years, specifically in biology. Enjoying biology as a subject. I also did some maths, but my most important focus was biology. I left after 13 years education, moving to the CSIR, the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, where I eventually became a chief scientist, and then ending up at the University of the Free State as director of the Center of Environmental Management. I did grow up in Bloemfontein in the Orange Free State. I studied my first degree at the University of Free State full-time. Afterwards, while I was teaching, I did part-time most of my studies, which includes my master degree. And then I left for the USA, where I did my PhD at Colorado State University in collaboration with University of Pretoria, where I worked on rivers in the state of Colorado. My PhD was done on the Kachirepude River in Colorado, near Fort Collins, the city of Fort Collins. It's the second biggest city in the state of Colorado. And what happens there is during the 1930s, they used coal tar to generate electricity, and that coal tar was dumped into a pit that wasn't lined, and eventually it starts seeping through into the river. After 78 years, it's been picked up in the river system itself, and what we need to do there is to track these oil seepage in the river by using biological indicators, that is now microinvertebrates or insects, water insects. We did use algae, specific types of algae as indicators, and then we used molecular markers that's more related to genetics to track these chemicals in the river system itself. Because it did take 78 years ending up in the river, the whole chemistry of the coal tar has changed, making it very difficult to track. And by tracking that, we can identify the areas in the river that was highly polluted, and that's been excavated and mitigated to improve the river bed and riparian zones around the river itself where the seepage occurs. Yeah, my typical day at the university is I will be lecturing or working specifically in the lab, or doing some admin, because obviously we've got students. I've got postdocs that's doing research for me. But I spent around 2 weeks a month in the field, monitoring specifically these green technologies that we put onto the dams or into rivers or wetlands, and to see how it performs. And I think that's for me the most important thing that I love the most, is to get out at nature and to see how these technologies improving the ecosystem services and the water qualities in such system where we employ them. What we're doing specifically for treating sewage water is we use microalgae. This is a consortium algae that specifically was grown in the lab to identify their specific characteristics to absorb also heavy metals and nutrients out of sewage wastewater. So we grew them up in the lab, and then we've got bioreactors in the field itself near the wastewater treatment plant, where we upscale these algae and then mass culture them and then release them into the maturation ponds. That's now the ponds, the last phase of your wastewater treatment plant, where these algae act then as a polishing mechanism, and they absorb then the nutrients out of the system so it doesn't end up in the rivers. We then flocculate, that means taking the algae out of the wastewater after they treat the wastewater, and we're currently busy looking at bioenergy and biofuel, and we're also looking at biofertilizer to use it as a byproduct for the whole circle of green economy. Okay, after we cultured the algae in the bioreactors, we release it every 3 weeks in the maturation ponds of your sewage treatment plants. They absorbs then all the nutrients, and normally these plants, sewage plants, has got 7 to 8 maturation ponds, so it flows naturally from one pond to another, and the algae is flowing with the water, so treating the water over a period between 20 to 30 days. Those algae then are being flocculated out of the system. So what we do is we use no electricity. We use a chemical that is naturally friendly to flocculate it. That means the algae is then moving up to the surface, and we scoop the algae off. And when we scoop the algae off, we sun dry it, because we don't, with these green technologies, we don't really use electricity or energy. We try to keep it as simple as possible. And after you dry it, then you can use that biomass for biofertilizer, mixing it with other aquatic plants, or you can use it as bioenergy. At this stage, we have successfully done it at Motetemba, one of the poorest communities in South Africa near Kroonstad. and there we've got a plant that treats 4.2 megaliters of water per day, sewage water, and then been released into the Olifants River. The other plant that we've got is at Mossel Bay, 30 kilometers from there is a small town, Brandbach, with 1,500 population. Here we also treat the wastewater, and after we treat the wastewater, they release the water and use it for irrigation for the sports fields of the schools. When you use the green treatment technology, we specifically call it Phytoremediation, and it's a passive treatment technology. So what it means is you use green plants or you use algae, but you don't use any electricity, and that's why the word is passive. You don't use hazardous chemicals to get it out of the system itself, like conventional plants. And that makes it a very eco-friendly technology that can be employed in any parts of the world, related to indigenous plants that you use or indigenous algae that you use to treat wastewater specifically. In South Africa, pollution is becoming a very large problem, and we are a water scarce country, so we need to preserve our water resources, and in many cases there's not enough money to put up treatment plants, and that's where this specific passive treatment technology come in very handy and can be used as a walkaway solution for companies or for government. Especially if you look at ecologic engineered wetlands that we use to treat acid mine drainage from coal mines in the Mpumalanga area. These wetlands has been modified, it's been enlarged to absorb these metals out of the system. The plants that is specifically related to Stypha capensis that we use there absorb the sulfates, absorb the high metals, aluminium, trace metals out of the system, and at the end improve the ecosystem services that the aquatic system provide, and indirectly improve the lives of humans. Yeah, I think if you've got a passion for a subject, doesn't matter if it's biology, science, or mathematics, if you've got at school a passion for that, you must hang on, because your dreams will eventually become reality, as in my case. I had a passion for biology, and today it's my career of what I'm doing, and I'm enjoying it a lot. So by just imagine at school it can become a reality. What makes my job very interested and gives me joy is the fact that each time I go out to the field I experience different situations, because one aquatic system is totally different from other aquatic system. If I, for example, look at wetlands, you get lots of different wetlands where you get pans, salt pans, you get valley bottom wetlands. So each time it's a different experience, and I think going out into the field and improving these ecosystems and these wetlands make my job worthwhile at the end of the day. I am a greenie, I love nature, so if I can get out in nature, it is for me always a bonus.